Yes, the Zimmerman note, the Zimmerman telegram. Okay. Right. The past couple of days, we've been talking about the United States. Okay. I know we focused a lot on European history here. With the U.S. getting involved, it's tough not to talk about them here. And we mentioned about the causes leading up to the United States getting involved in World War One. Okay. The first step to the U.S. getting involved was what? The sinking of the, what was it? What was it? Alana, you're on a roll. Go ahead. The Lusitania, yep, good job. So we talked about that British passenger ship. Okay, we mentioned about how 130 Americans, innocent civilians here died in the sinking of Lusitania. And what was it here with Germany? What were they doing? What was this policy that they were trying to perform here early on in the war? What was that called, Connor? Yeah, unrestricted submarine warfare. Good, good. So they were trying to destroy everything coming into Great Britain. Because Great Britain is a what? What is it, Connor? An island, right? So they're limited to what resources and raw materials they have. So during that age of imperialism, expansion, exploration, their goal is to try to take over as much territory as possible, extract resources that they need to survive. So yeah, it's important to know. It's important to know. So Germany thought, well, we just cut off Great Britain from these resources here, raw materials, starve them out. Chances are they might drop out, right? And this is very much like what we talked about with Napoleon and something else, right? And how they're trying to close off Europe from Great Britain. So with that, a form of economic warfare here. And they drop out, Germany has a higher chance of winning this war, Western Front, and ultimately the rest of it, conquering all of Europe. Okay, all right, so we talked about Lusitania. Did we join though? Did we join in 1950? We joined. Jason, no, we did not. Okay, so what was the tensions here for the U.S. citizens? Do you think they're happy with Woodrow Wilson's decision to stay out of it, stay isolated? Oz? No, they were a little upset, right? They're saying this guy's a little bit weak here, huh? And he's not joining after 130 American citizens died, perished at this event. Okay, a lot of the reports went back to the U.S. from Great Britain because remember, communication, a lot of it was controlled by Great Britain, all of it. And they're talking about a lot of the bodies washing ashore, Liverpool, along the coastline of Great Britain, where the Lusitania was sunk. And obviously, that's raising a lot of tensions for U.S. citizens. All right, and finally here, we have the Zimmerman telegram. So give you some time, work on this, Belrayer. Explain what the Zimmerman telegram was, detail its significance, how this telegram changed the course of World War I. And what were some advantages for Mexico and Germany, as stated in the telegram? Yeah. What? You're the guy. Why don't you bring me one then? Don't call it even. Don't call it even. Don't call it even. Maybe not. That's it. All right, so just a reminder, if you're missing something on Sapphire, it'll come up as ABS, okay, meaning absent. So if you turn in that assignment here, I'll give you credit for it. But if you don't agree, we'll just take the A out of ABS and the BS. That doesn't count, right? So I'll turn it into a zero. Oh, oh, thanks, man. Oh, got it. So if you turn an assignment, make sure you let me know, email me. I'll put that grade in right away. If you don't, well, it's going to turn into a zero soon. All right, okay, so we talked about Lusitania and how it's a step closer to the United States joining into World War One. Okay, how we saw that even after this dramatic event, this terrible event, the U.S. still did not join. Okay, and again, that was one of the decisions here for Woodrow Wilson that was very tough. And we have a lot of immigrant groups. Okay, we're a melting pot. If we join in one side, who knows what could happen internally? So that's why Woodrow Wilson, the longest time, stayed out of this conflict as long as possible. Okay, we'll talk more tomorrow about some of the acts that were created and the heavy government influence into the people's lives to make sure that they can keep the U.S. protected from, let's say, rebellion or revolt internally. So we'll mention more about the espionage and the sedition acts tomorrow. Now, a lot of people view Woodrow Wilson as somewhat of a tyrannical leader during this time. Here he is taking away some of the freedoms, rights of the people, and something to talk about, something to discuss. All right, so finally, the last cause here for the U.S., the last straw, so to speak, the Zimmerman telegram. What was it all about? How was it named the Zimmerman telegram, too? Chris, go ahead.
It was sent by Zimmerman. And
Arthur Zimmerman, yep, good job. So the foreign secretary of Germany, good job.
And he was proposing that Mexico stays back in America, so that Germany would have to fight America.
Yeah, good job, right? So for Germany, you see this as a opportunity to keep the United States out of the war in Europe as long as possible, right? You see this as a way to try to keep this strong industrial power. That's probably going to tip the scale when it comes to their involvement in Europe. If you can try to keep the U.S. out of the war in Europe, keep them preoccupied in the Western Hemisphere, that might give enough time for Germany to lay out an assault, maybe an invasion here again into France, Great Britain, obviously, take over and solidify all of Europe. Okay, if they can do that, well, that's going to be an easier time for Germany then to regroup in a way, try to build up their military once again, and maybe send troops over to the United States. All right, so Mexico is going to try to keep the United States out of this war in Europe. That's the goal for Germany. Then they can maybe take over what we have the Western Front, this trench warfare, maybe land an offensive assault on these two great powers in Europe, and we'll see what happens. All right, okay, so Germany, their opportunity, their goal here, as stated at the bottom here, their reward is to keep the U.S. out. Okay, then they can focus their attention on Great Britain and France, the Western Front. We'll talk about Russia here soon enough. All right, we'll talk about them probably maybe tomorrow, maybe Friday here, and what happens with them. Okay, they drop out of the war, and the Eastern Front is pretty much left off, right? And Germany can then focus all their attention on Great Britain and France. So we'll mention here what happens and why this telegram maybe kind of makes sense for Germany. All right, what about Mexico? What are they going to get in return? Connor, go ahead. Yeah, good job, right? So we talked a little bit about the hostility, okay, between the United States and Mexico building up to World War I. There was a war fought, Mexican-American War, right? And how this territory was taken from Mexico. Think about Texas, New Mexico, when you think about Arizona, right? These lands here taken by the U.S. And we also mentioned a little bit building up to World War I with Woodrow Wilson, okay, how he was trying to instill these businesses here, extracting oil, resources from Mexico, and Mexico nationalized them. So that means they took them from the United States. So we know the United States, the capitalist system, these private businesses were wreaking a lot of money, right? They were benefiting a lot for the United States. And Mexico tried to nationalize it here, causing a big stink with Woodrow Wilson. So this is just right before the U.S. gets involved. So Germany, realizing these tensions are high with Mexico and the U.S., they thought, well, we can maybe build on these tensions. Maybe have Mexico attack the United States, be preoccupied. So yeah, Mexico in return would get these territories, these lands, right, that they lost to the United States. All right, okay. So what were the problems of this plan? What were some of the problems? Parker. Yeah. Whoa, jeez. Okay, yeah. So when?
Not really, no. I want you to be the baby.
Right. Okay, anyway, so yeah, when you're looking at Mexico here against the United States, it just won't happen, right? Militarily, don't match up, okay? And it would just be a suicide mission really for Mexico. Yeah, they can't take it. So that's just not even in doubt. And at that point, to hold them off that long until Germany finally defeats Great Britain and France, sends their troops all the way across the Atlantic Ocean, there's just no way that would happen. All right, good, good. So yeah, Mexico. What about those states there? What about Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona? The video towards the end mentioned something about all right, some of the problems with this telegram, this objective. Go ahead, why?
Most of the people who spoke English and Mexican speak Spanish, so it wouldn't really make sense to.
Yeah, right. So when it comes to their allegiance to Mexico, it's long gone. Right? When it comes to their language, their history, their culture, right, it's long gone. And a lot of the people there speak English now. So in all reality, it won't really work out. Also, do you think they would be able to hold these lands from internal revolts or rebellions? No, we all know Texas. They got guns walking around the streets all the time. So good luck. Good luck trying to hold these lands from these people here. It's not going to happen. All right. Okay. All right. So with that, what else? What else? You think Germany's going to be able to send all these troops and soldiers across the Atlantic Ocean? No, there's still an island there that, even though they might get defeated in mainland Europe and France, okay, they still have control of the seas. So do you think the German Navy could take on the Royal Navy out in the open water? Probably not, right? And then who's third largest navy in the world? We talked about that quite a bit already, building up in World War One. The United States. So again, good luck, right? You're not going to make it. It's not going to work out. It's not going to be any, let's say, achievable goal. So in all reality, the Zimmerman telegram, it was, I don't know, it was one of those things where it was a last ditch effort maybe for Germany, but it just wasn't feasible. It wasn't really going to happen. Okay. With that, again, there's a lot of conspiracy around. So again, who controlled the means of communication? Nick? Yeah, Great Britain, right? So they had these cables that stretched literally across the world here, and that they controlled any type of communication coming in and out. Even Germans, right? So there's a lot of people saying that, you know what, maybe this was just made up. Maybe this was Great Britain's way of trying to get the United States involved. Again, the war was going on for 3 years now. And they're going to try to do everything they can to try to seek an advantage. And maybe this was what it was. And it works, right? It worked. Let's say that was the case. This program did actually get sent out by Zimmerman. So we can maybe put those conspiracy theories to the side. Okay. All right. So with that, how does it change the course of World War One? Well, the U.S. gets involved. Plain and simple, right? Plain and simple. And we know that they are the strongest industrial power leading up to World War One and even after. Okay, so their military is on the rise. And this is just going to be too much for Germany to take on France, Great Britain, and yet the United States. Okay, even if Russia's out of the war, even if that two-front war is gone, U.S. joining is just going to be too much. Okay, and from here on out, you're going to see the world really sitting in the back seat to the United States, building up to World War II, after World War II, even. As we're going to be supplying a lot of goods and materials and being the ones that are rebuilding Europe and the rest of the world after World War II. So yeah, this Zimmerman telegram never happened. Who knows? Maybe we wouldn't have joined the war. Maybe we wouldn't be the superpower we are today without this telegram. Right? Pretty wild stuff to think about. Probably not, but hey, this is what got us pushed into World War One, Indian international levels. No, not too much. Not too much. All right, so here are your terms for today. All right, Selective Service Act, 1917. Propaganda Committee on Public Information. So again, with the propaganda assignment here I have for you, it is classwork, so it shouldn't be homework for you. We will go over in class and it carries over to tomorrow, no problem. All right, okay, Selective Service Act of 1917. What do we got? What do we got? Austin, what do you have? On the first term. Whoa. Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. We didn't go over the convoy system yesterday, do we? Okay. All right. Just make sure. Convoy system. All right. Yeah. This is a group of ships there that was protecting a lot of these military supplies and armaments. Eventually, the troops going across the ocean to the United States. Okay. And with that, what type of path did they take? Not a straight line, but zigzag, right? So we talked about that yesterday with Lusitania and how it was only sunk. Okay, but this convoy system is going to be very important to try to protect our troops, our resources, our materials, and military supplies, making it across the Atlantic. And again, those submarines. All right, here you go. Select the service act. Go ahead.
Authorize, federal government really expand
All right, yeah, good job, good job. So with the Select the Service Act, it is a draft, right? And this is drafting American citizens into the war. So ages from 18 to 25 to get involved. Again, was our military ready for World War I? Were we building up our military right like, let's say, these other European countries? No, our Navy were, right, our Navy, but in all reality, our Army was not ready. Okay, when it comes to training, when it comes to the style of warfare, trench warfare, we had no idea what was going on. The new forms of weaponry that were involved, again, had no clue. There were a lot of troops, a lot of citizens, though, that actually volunteered over in Europe because they're excited for this war. Okay, they thought that this was a duty, a different type of objective here for U.S. citizens to be a part of. In many cases, a game. Okay, kind of like a game. And the reason for it is because of the Spanish-American War, which we didn't really talk too much about. Okay, this was such a lopsided war, and we won pretty handily. So the only idea of warfare we had was this conflict. Okay, so in all reality, we thought, oh, you know, it's going to be a game. So a lot of troops, a lot of citizens actually volunteered service over in Europe before we actually got involved. All right, so the Selective Service Act, they changed the name of it though. And the reason for it is because when we get to the Civil War, when you talk about that next year, There were a lot of uprisings, a lot of revolts over the draft. Okay, to a point where there's a lot of hostility in New York City. You guys ever see the movie Gangs of New York? No? Oh, it's a really good movie. It's a little graphic, a little bloody at times, but it is a great movie representing the time period and how there's a lot of viewpoints about America and its involvement in the Civil War. And there's literally immigrants that are coming into the United States during the Civil War. As they're walking off the ship from these European countries, they're pushed right back on to these ships going, let's say, to fight in the South against the Confederate Army. So can you imagine that? It's like, hey, welcome to the United States. Here's a gun, here's a uniform, back on the ship. Good luck down in the South against the Confederates. You're like, what? That's a great movie. His nickname's a butcher in that. Okay, all right, propaganda. What is it? What do you have for propaganda? Chris? Yeah, good job, right? So this is a way to try to influence the population for warfare, maybe against, maybe to help with the population during the war, to maybe save resources when it comes to rationing types of resources for the use of the military. So when it comes to food, when it comes to certain materials, eventually like rubber, steel, metal, they want to make sure that they can have that for the war effort. Again, with propaganda, there's other views of it when you're trying to dehumanize the enemy. What does dehumanization mean? What does that mean? Should have put that as a term for it. You're dehumanizing the enemy. You're trying to make a connection to try to see them as not people, see them as not human, see them as like animals. Okay, so looking at them as bloodthirsty, animalistic creatures. And the goal is to try to separate that emotional connection you might have, let's say, when you're fighting in war. Okay, especially with these German soldiers, right? We have a lot of German ancestry in the United States. These people look a lot like, right? When we fight later in World War II, when it comes to the Japanese, we can make that connection a little bit easier, obviously. But in World War I and World War II, when we fight Germany, it's a little bit harder to do. And you need to have that connection. You need to have that separation of the emotional ties you might have when you're fighting this opposition. So yeah, with propaganda, it does get a little ugly. Right? We view these people as animals, as brutes in many cases. All right, Committee of Public Information. What do we got? Last one. Chris, thank you. Yeah, good job, right? Good job. So again, when you're looking at Woodrow Wilson, his role as president, he was trying to really ramp up the efforts of the government. And the reason for it is because he wants to make sure that everybody's directed to one end and one objective here. That way, this conflict. Right? There's a lot of, again, with him, with the immigrant populations in the U.S., he was worried that there could be an internal rebellion, a revolt that could happen. So that's why government really increased during the time of World War I. And from there, it's not like they just let loose, not like they let the reins go. They kind of control that power and hold on to it. So the Committee of Public Information, this is the group, the organization that is pumping out these forms of propaganda, which we're going to be talking about today towards the end of class. All right, so with that, Selective Service Act, again, they changed the name of it to not include drafts because there was a lot of revolts, a lot of rebellions internally in the United States because we were just taking people, right, that maybe didn't want to be a part of this war and throwing them in this conflict. Might go against religious values, might go against their family values, social values, whatever it might be. And a lot of people thought this was unjust. But in any case, with World War I, okay, the only war that we could really think of beforehand was the Spanish-American War, where we didn't actually have too many casualties, where we didn't actually have too many deaths in this conflict. So people thought, well, this is going to be like a game. Okay, this is going to be fun. We can go over in Europe and show how powerful we are as Americans. Okay, in all reality, they'll face the true outcomes of that. Realize that war isn't what it's cracked up to be, and that these new forms of weaponry, like chemical warfare, like artillery, tanks, flamethrowers, what we already talked about with these weapons of warfare, all being applied to the battlefield is brutal. Okay, trench life is terrible, right? And a lot of these American troops will realize that real quick. But at the start, there's a lot of citizens that were actually volunteering over in Europe, being a part of some of these air groups, these new forms of machinery, these airplanes, okay, being a part of some of these squadrons in Europe, even before the U.S. gets involved. And with the movie, if we get time here to watch it towards the end of the chapter, that's what it was really all about. Some of these American citizens volunteering their time before US gets involved to fight against Germany up in the skies. Because who wouldn't want to fly one of these new forms of weaponry here, right? Who wouldn't want to use these airplanes that are just first being introduced? All right, so with that, 4.8 million American men fought in World War I. Okay, so that's a lot. Again, we needed to ramp up our efforts. It's not like our military was ready to roll, ready to go, okay, like these other European countries. Yeah, we had a strong Navy, but in all reality, we weren't ready for this new style of warfare. So we had to ramp up our numbers, okay? And we'll see quick that we weren't ready for this style of warfare at all. We're still kind of competing against and combating against these styles during the Civil War yet, where you just line up and mostly hand-to-hand combat, which that's not the case anymore. All right, so with that, okay, with the Selective Service Act still around today, so when you're 18 in here, you have to sign up for it. You men in here, 18 to 25, in case, let's say, a war does break out, a draft will get involved. Oh man, okay, so some scary stuff, especially what we know about with current events today. All right, so moving on here. All right, so with that, the Committee on Public Information, their goal was to try to prepare ourselves for this conflict. Again, dehumanizing the enemy, showing Germany as this bloodthirsty ape. A lot of times you'll see that. Okay, they'll show them as a gorilla that is bloodthirsty, that's blood dripping from, let's say, a huge different weapon that they're holding. Okay, a lot of times they're holding Lady Liberty and showing it Lady Liberty in distress and emphasizing that we need to get involved, or who knows, this war might actually reach American soil. So with that, okay, this forms of propaganda were geared and shifted for the U.S. involvement in this conflict. As the Zimmerman telegram was the last cause, the last straw for us to get involved, we need to make sure we can ramp up our efforts and show who the true enemy is and get everybody excited for this conflict. All right, so like I said, when it comes to this draft opposition, there's a lot of people that were kicking back. And if you take me for government, freedom, right, that elective, we'll talk a lot about this when it comes to certain court cases that were objecting against the draft, saying that this was unconstitutional, that you can't force people into a war, especially if it goes against their religious values, or, I don't know, their political ideology. So we'll mention quite a bit about that and how people, I don't know, try to dodge the draft or try to emphasize people to stay away from the draft, okay, to throw away these draft cards, which is a federal offense. Find some jail time during that, for that. And this is not a new thing. Again, this happened in the Civil War. That's why they changed the name to Selective Service Act, so that there wouldn't be so much hostility. Okay, again, when we get to the Vietnam War, right? A lot of people, a lot of signs, a lot of protests where they're burning their draft cards right in public, right in front of people's faces, right? And, media to see it. And this was a way to try to oppose the government's overreach, let's say, into pushing people into a war that they don't want to be a part of. So yeah, there's a lot of opposition to it. But for the most part, a lot of American citizens were for the conflict. They wanted to see exactly our might, show ourselves as this next rising power, and do our best to continue to rise that level of an international force, an international power. Show the rest of the world who America's all about. Okay, all right, is there any questions here? Selective Service Act, the draft. No? Okay, propaganda. All right, so here's the assignment, which we'll probably only get through one of them today, and tomorrow we'll go through the rest. So what I want you to do is I'll put a piece of propaganda on the board, and all you're going to do is answer the questions based off of that piece of propaganda. It's pretty easy, pretty self-explanatory. But I just want to make sure you see some of these sources of propaganda, see what they look like, and present it to it so you can make the connection moving forward how the government was doing its best to prepare the U.S. citizens for this conflict. All right, so here's your assignment. What you're going to do is just answer these questions based on the propaganda piece I put up on the board. There's only 4 questions per propaganda piece. All right, so again, use detail here, right? Okay, answer in complete sentences. It's not like you can just copy and paste online, but I don't know if you find the piece online somewhere, just don't do that. Answer in your own words. Use detail. Just don't put down a couple words and call it quits, right? So there you go. And here's the first piece we're going to go over. We're going to go over 5 of them together in class. And then tomorrow, we'll kind of review it. We'll go over it. This was one you probably saw before. And I put it in the presentation. So yeah, you've seen it already. But maybe you saw it before. But anyway, here's the first piece for propaganda piece number 1. Just answer your questions based off of what you see. What's written, right? Try to realize who this guy is. Why is he pointing a finger at you? Right, there you go. There you go. So I'll give you some time, a couple minutes here. This will probably be the only one we go over since we're running low on time. And we'll finish this up tomorrow. What we doing? Austin, you good? All right. That's good. But just to get you. Just so everybody's on the same page, who is this guy? What's his name? Austin? Uncle Sam. All right, good, good. So just don't put up some old geezer, okay? Uncle Sam. Chris.
Who would later be replaced by Tom?
You like Boris Hammer. If you have any questions on it, let me know. I'm gonna be on campus. All right, so like I said, we'll go over a few more of them tomorrow. So I have 4 more pieces of propaganda I'd like to go over. Hey, don't, if you want to work ahead, you can, but we're just gonna do it in class, so just hold on, okay? All right, so tomorrow we'll go over the 4 other pieces. We'll go over them together, we'll discuss them then towards the end, and then we'll move on, talk more about Russia, what's going on with them in World War I. Okay? All right, so save this, don't get rid of it. Okay, we will be working on it tomorrow.